Dr. John Gottman was once asked during a training presentation whether he had data or research on polyamorous relationships. And he said, well, either not a lot of studies have been done or they don't last long enough for them to be studied. And he made a bit of a joke with his wife, Julie, on the stage with him, saying that why would he want more than one Julie? And she looked at him very strangely. And they had a laugh about it, but he said, like, one wife is enough. But there is a big difference between commitment and monogamy. And basically, you can have a committed, in fact, commitment is the biggest and probably the most important thing in any relationship. Because as we know from open relationships, you can be committed to another person and have your primary relationship and your security and stability with that one person, but you don't necessarily have to be monogamous. And there's so many different variations and forms that come with those type of structures, starting with just a swingers, so couples who will only do things together, to more broadly open relationships where they're allowed to explore with others, through to polyamory, which is allowing your partner to have feelings for and develop an emotional relationship with someone else. So I guess we need to ask ourselves, are they onto something? If you look at the work of Esther Perel, she talks about that when you come into a relationship, two of your primary human needs come into conflict. Your need for stability and security, and your need for freedom, variety, and novelty. And a relationship, how are those two things compatible in a relationship? Well, it depends on the level of freedom, variety, and novelty that that relationship is going to allow. But the majority of traditional committed relationships do not, by their very nature, allow for variety and exploration and having sex with other people. I remember when I first began to treat couples. This was back in 2010, and it was really interesting to me, in fact, quite eye-opening, to see the amount of infidelity and cheating that was going on in people's relationships. Now, we can't say what percentage of infidelity and cheating contributes to the current divorce rates. However, I would say that there is something going on in terms of the level of freedom and variety allowed in a relationship and how long relationships continue. Now, that could be quite a controversial opinion. However, this comes from over 12 years of working with couples and seeing that wherever human beings feel curtailed or limited, or their freedom of expression and their freedom to be who they want to be is controlled or limited, it tends to lead to things going underground. And I do wonder how many people in relationships keep certain parts of themselves deep underground because they're too afraid to say what they really want. And I would say that I fell into that category at various points, either in my marriage or other relationships. I think that a lot of people feel concerned to describe or share with their partner what their true needs are. Even in a committed relationship where both people are happy to continue to be monogamous, in terms of sex and sexual fulfillment, I think that most people are tapping into 20%, if that, of their sexual experience, even with that person. And I think the problem is that most people are afraid, like I said, to express a fantasy or express a need. This is an area of work in terms of relationships and sexuality that I am focusing more and more on and doing a lot more research on these days, because it's just showing up in my couples. and being able to help couples navigate these things is a part of my work. How much of these issues contribute to the eventual breakdown of marriages? Why is there such a high rate of infidelity? Statistically, and I don't know if these stats are still accurate, but it showed that something like 50% of men would have some kind of infidelity or cheating in their lives in terms of a relationship. It used to be that women were a lot lower in a percentage, but over the last 20 to 30 years, women, now that they've entered the workforce and have careers and they're getting exposure to other men in the workplace, are catching up in terms of infidelity in relationships. I think they're getting up to like 30 to 40% of women will have some kind of infidelity in their lives. So what is this telling us? There's something that's not working in many monogamous relationships. It's not saying that being in a committed, secure relationship is wrong. Of course it's not, because everyone needs that stability. We would need to look at the drawbacks or the potential hazards or risks of opening up a relationship. And obviously, one of the core concerns that people have or would have is jealousy and the breakdown of trust. What this means is that if you are going to move into a form of open relationship, you need to have a level of trust and commitment greater than any other traditional relationship. This could be a good thing, because to be able to deeply explore your fear and your vulnerability around your partner potentially being swept off their feet by somebody else, this is important. And being able to say that we as a couple are completely committed to each other and that our home and our stability will never be at risk, and that we implicitly trust each other. And that trust requires a level of openness and transparency in communication greater than any other type of relationship. And maybe that's what we need to learn from the people who are willing to explore open relationships, is a level of openness and transparency of thoughts and feelings and desires and fantasy that gets shared and does not go underground and eventually lead in an infidelity. So it's something worth thinking about and considering in terms of your relationship. And I'd love to hear in your comments below what your thoughts and struggles are in terms of this issue of the traditional commitment means monogamy versus what it could mean to have a strong committed relationship, but not necessarily monogamy.